Sometimes I hate being right. This is the Supro from yesterday's video, and in that video I changed out the cathode bypass cap here on the output stage, which was, the original was damaged by a bad 6v6, got a new 6v6 in there. All this is working fine. There was a toasted resistor here at R4. As I mentioned in the previous video, I mistakenly initially put in a 470K because the old one, the color band was discolored enough that the multiplier looked like 470. It's 47K. So I've got a 2-watt Vishay 47K in here. I think the reason the old one died is there's almost 200 volts here on this cathode. It's about 190 something, 196, I think. And some resistors are only rated for up to 250 volts. And sometimes they don't meet their rating. I think that's probably why that one went out. This 2-watt Vishay is rated for a 500 volt drop across it. So it should be absolutely fine with just under 200 volts. Less than 50% of its capability. But anyway, in yesterday's video, I also mentioned the problem with amps like this is that you know that's wrong. You have to take the whole thing apart to do that, and then you have to put it back together almost all the way. I don't have the knobs on to test it. Well, I have done that, and it has a problem, and all this has got to come back out. Let me demonstrate the problem. So, I don't know if there's just a fault in the tone stack or whether there's some other thing happening. I've got to pull this board out and look at all the solder joints and test this pot and all this fun stuff. And maybe an intermittent pot. It doesn't seem to be. It seems to be the board flex because I've replicated it by flexing other places. It's not any of these multi-pin connectors. Well, 2-pin connectors. I've verified that that's not it. It was a little bit of a needle in a haystack because as I pressed on this, the signal went in and out. But it wasn't because of this connection. It was because I was flexing the board just a little bit. Even moving some of the heater wires put enough pressure on the board to make it fluctuate. And all the hardware is tight. These screws are tight, and the pots are tight to the chassis for the first time in the amp's life. Anyway, there are a lot of solder-starved resistor connections, and I'm sure most of the other joints are solder-starved because this is just wave soldered from the bottom, and you don't really always get the best solder. So it's probably just one joint that needs some help, but I've got to take the entire haystack apart to find that needle. So here we go. It should be faster to do it a second time, but it's still a grr-r kind of moment. Now, I didn't show you this. You have to trust me, but I pulled this entire board out again, and I reflowed every solder connection throughout the entire amp, top and bottom, and I knew that would be a big help. I removed all the hardware, of course, but I noticed in the process that the Loctite that they put on the screws weren't all the way tight when they put on the Loctite. And so that Loctite had actually gone down between the screw hardware and the metal ring, the pad on the board where ground is made. And in some cases, had actually leaked down into the threads of the standoffs that these screws go into. And those standoffs are connected to chassis, which makes everything ground. So I soaked all the hardware in some acetone. You can see it's a little bit pinkish from the Loctite that has gone into that. And I used a Q-tip to clean all the standoffs beneath, and I used a Q-tip to clean off any Loctite residue from the metal pads. So when I put this back together, I knew that I would have metal to metal to metal contact for the best grounds. And at this point, it's not cutting out anymore. So I don't know whether it was these grounds. I don't know whether it was one or more bad solder joints. It might have been a combination. But because I did not want to pull, fix, and return this board yet another time, I just shotgunned it. If this were some valuable amp from 1967, 68, whatever, where every non-original solder joint or non-original component potentially affected the value to a collector, I would have been much more cautious and judicious, not replacing anything or touching anything that did not absolutely need to be done. However, in an amp that meets that description, I can do it all without pulling the entire board out. I can say, okay, yeah, I definitely have a problem with this resistor right here. I can track that down. I would also have the schematic, which I don't have here. Anyway, now that that's all done, So it works, and it's not going to cut out anymore. Still not a fan of the sound. It's okay. It sounds okay. Nothing that interesting. I don't like the range of the treble or bass controls. I don't like the nature of the overdrive. I haven't tested the reverb yet, but it's all right. Okay. It's a shame that it needed all this much work to get back to okay, as opposed to making noise and blowing up. But not my circus, not my monkeys. Thanks for watching.